Hello! In this video, I'll be presenting the argument from time travel for God's existence. Yes, you heard that right. This argument is almost entirely not a joke, but not quite. Here it is formulated deductively. 1. If time travel is metaphysically possible, then God exists. 2. Time travel is metaphysically possible. 3. Therefore, God exists. Now, this argument is logically valid, so as long as the premises are true, the conclusion is true as well. Now, I'm first going to clarify how I'm using the term metaphysically possible. The current laws of physics that we have might make time travel impossible. But for something to be metaphysically possible, that just means that it could be possible in a universe with some possible laws of physics. Now, I'm going to present 0 arguments for premise 2. I'm not very sure of that premise myself. However, I have a very interesting argument for premise 1, so that's what I will be presenting in this video. Here's some background information to set up the argument for premise 1. First, there's only one past. There's only one correct history of our universe. This may seem obvious, but it's important because it entails that you can't change the past. Say that I built a house a decade ago, but I decided that I hate the house, so I go back in time and destroy the house. That will mean that there are 2 pasts, one with the house and the other without it. And that's not actually how time works, so the scenario is impossible. However, you could still participate in the past. For example, if I go back in time and help my younger self build a house, then that would be totally fine. The one past that's always been the same includes me helping myself build that house. It would be weird because I will remember from my childhood building the house alongside the older me, and then I will be my older self and act out everything that I remember. It's crazy, but it isn't contradictory. Unless you do get into a grandfather paradox. A grandfather paradox is when you go back in time and change something that makes it impossible for you to have gone back in time. The example always given is going back in time and killing your grandfather. If you go back and kill your grandfather before he has children, then one of your parents would never have existed, so you wouldn't have existed either. But if you never existed, then you were never able to kill your grandfather, so he's still alive. But if he never died, then he would have been able to have children, so that parent would have existed and you would exist, so you would be able to go back in time and kill him. So you both do and do not kill your grandfather. That's a contradiction. Just like a round square or a married bachelor, the grandfather paradox is impossible. But that's actually really weird. I can be standing next to my grandfather and act in one way that makes reality itself a contradiction, or act another way and everything just goes along normally. Okay, one last thing. Impossible things aren't possible. That seems very obvious, but again, this has profound implications. Think of all the metaphysically possible variations of reality where time travel occurs. Now, all those worlds where a grandfather paradox occurs entail a contradiction. Let's focus on a world where I went to the past and was in a position where I could kill my grandfather. It's possible for me to not kill him, which I just want to say is what would happen because I'm not a murderer. But it's possible for me to kill him as well. However, because a grandfather paradox is impossible, killing him would be impossible. So somehow killing him is both possible and impossible. But impossible things aren't possible. So if time travel can really happen, we need an explanation for why these possible worlds that in some sense have a possibility of happening are nonetheless actually impossible. Now the theist has a perfectly good answer. He could say that God chooses what possible world we live in. And God is a God of order, so he necessarily will only consider making worlds without contradictions in them. If he knew that creating such and such a world entailed a grandfather paradox, he wouldn't create it. So killing my grandfather is impossible because God would never allow it, and it could only happen if God allowed it. There's a lot of nitpicky nuance here about the word possible that could be expounded on, but for the sake of time, I'm going to gloss over it. Moving on, the atheist on the other hand has no comparable explanation. If the ultimate grounding of reality is not in the will of God, there's no clear way around time travel entailing that impossibilities are possible. One last note, this argument works way better with Molinism, because that's the only way God could allow genuine indeterminism while being certain that no contradictions would ensue. That's the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Please share and subscribe if you enjoyed this content.